This summer, I experienced the pains of the government believing that it knows better than companies and businesses. I worked for a concrete company, so in construction, and a certain town regulated that insulation had to be 4 inches thick on the building that I was working on instead of 2 inches thick, as is normal. This regulation by the government forced my boss to go drive to the supply store, waste hours buying new insulation. Then my coworkers and I had to spend several more hours cutting up additional insulation just so that we could comply with a random government regulation that happened to be slightly different in one town rather than the normal regulation. This is an example of the government thinking that it knows better, but instead causing inefficiency. And this point is extremely clear in the Federal Aviation Administration. Our prompt today is, should the U.S. air traffic control be privatized? The U.S. air traffic control, of course, is the group that sits at those large towers in airplanes and at airports and directs airplanes when to land and makes sure that we don't have excessive crashes. It's run by the Federal Aviation Administration. Forbes reports on June 26, 2025, that the Federal Aviation Administration uses extremely outdated tech. It gives examples of this. Like, it uses 1980s technology, such as floppy disks, which I don't even know what those are, and bulky computers, which I have heard of but have never seen. These are outdated technologies, clearly, and as Forbes points out, this is clearly a problem when when a government-run organization is using tech from nearly 50 years ago. Donald Trump has proposed that the fix to this, Forbes says, is simply more money. CNN on November 9, 2025, says that it's quite clear now to everyone that this is a broken system. A 2018 US bill proposed to fix this system, but it was shot down for reasons we'll discuss later. So now that we've gone over our first point, the background to this whole problem, we'll next look at second, the benefits of privatization, and second, the answer to should the air traffic control be privatized. What are the benefits of privatization? Why shouldn't the government run air traffic control? The answer is because private companies are almost universally more efficient than government. Now, that seems like a bold statement to make, but it is true because of the profit motive. Thomas Sowell writes in his book Basic Economics about how the profit motive directs private companies to be more efficient than the government. Now, this sounds vague and conceptual, so what exactly is the profit motive? Well, the profit motive is the idea that a company must make a profit if it wishes to stay in business. A government, on the other hand, does not. They can simply raise taxes. A government does not need to create value in order to stay in business, whereas a business does. We can see this actually in my summer job that I worked for, as I referenced in the introduction story. My boss has to make a profit or else he will go out of business. This seems brutal and unfair to my boss, but it's necessary if we wish to have a ordered and efficient society that creates value for people. And this is because my boss cannot squander his resources. My boss must make sure that the money he's getting for building sidewalks and constructing foundations to buildings exceeds that which he pays to his employees and on materials. This ensures that my boss doesn't hire 500 workers and give them all free McDonald's food every single day without requiring them to do any work. In other words, it keeps him accountable to society. He must create additional value if he wishes to stay in business, instead of simply taking value from others. This is what makes privatization such an incredible force in inefficiency, as Thomas Sowell lays out in his book, Basic Economics. Friedrich Hayek, the Another famous economist who believed in the Austrian school of economics, frequently made this point as well. He talked about how, quote, in his book, The Fatal Conceit, about he believed the fatal conceit is exactly that the government believes it can be more efficient than businesses. This is a fatal conceit because it results in disaster. We've seen this in communist societies where the government believes that it can better direct resources. The government does not direct resources as efficiently as private companies because it lacks a profit motive, a necessity to be efficient. So let's get on to the answer. And I've clearly made the case for privatization. So for that reason, it seems very obvious that privatization is the answer. And this is backed up by the actual statistics. You see, Canada, as Forbes reports on June 26, 2025, Canada also has implemented a privatized air traffic control. It did this in 1996. Here are the statistics. After privatizing their air traffic control, the air traffic control now runs for one half of the cost. It has three times as much more advanced technology. It implements changes twice as fast, and it is six times more safe than it was before becoming privatized. These stats are undeniable. Unfortunately, this 2018 US Congress bill that we discussed was shot down not because it would be inefficient, not because it lacked the profit, it would have lacked the profit motive. It was shot down by government lobbying interests. This is exactly the problem with government-run industries. It has other interests besides generating a profit and creating a value. So as we can see, the government does not know better. It didn't know better that 4 inches of insulation are better than two, like in the intro story. And it also doesn't know better that privatization is bad. Privatization will solve the air traffic control's inefficiencies.